Good to be with you. Steve Johnson, the wildlife guy, as Steph Duplessis likes to call me. So welcome to our little session here, the wisdom from the waterhole. What I'm going to talk about tonight is being the future you. Being the future you. We all have experienced pain and fear at some point in time. And it's the degree to which you allow that fear or pain to dictate and drive your life that determines how successful you are in life. And so I'm going to be talking about your future you and being your legacy today. But first, I would like to take you on a little bit of a journey. I'd like you to ask you to come with me on a safari. Over my 45 years of being in the wildlife industry, I have had amazing experiences and very satisfying life being out in the bush. But one particular instance really comes to mind that speaks to legacy. So I'd like you to come back with me in a bit of time. About 2 years ago, I'm an avid wildlife photographer, and I was on a safari with my son Ian and a great friend of mine, photographer and spiritual guru from North America, part Native American Indian shaman. And we got permission to go and walk in the Chobe Safari National Park. And we were walking down towards a waterhole. And so I'd like you to come with me and imagine you behind me, and behind you is my son Ian and John, and we're stepping through the bushes, putting branches back as the thorn trees catch in our clothes. And eventually we come to this huge, spreading, awesome tree that is at the edge of the waterhole. And we sneak underneath it, and we set up our camera equipment in the darkness, looking out in the lightness where the waterhole is. And as we're waiting for some of the wildlife to come down and for us to get the perfect shot, I was just mentioning to John that we were actually very privileged to be where we were. Because in the project that I'd been running, part of the work that we were doing is that we'd been recreating the corridors that the elephant and buffalo and zebra and wildebeest used to migrate through Zimbabwe, from the Hwange National Park, Victoria Falls, through the Chobe National Park, through the Caprivi, and into Angola and Zambia. Because without recreating those corridors, we had been minimizing the space which the wildlife, the elephants primarily, needed to be able to carry out their natural life cycles. And that this was where we were sitting was actually part of one of those corridors that led into to Zambia. And as we were just sitting and waiting for some creature to come to the waterhole, John just nudged me and he says, you know what, Steve? That's some legacy you've got. That's some legacy. And I was quite shocked. I looked down at him and I said, what do you mean, John? And he said, yeah, being part of the whole process of recreating where these wonderful animals needed to go to move and to migrate and to survive, that's some legacy. Well, it shocked me. I must say it shocked me, because I'd never thought that the work that I was doing was any part of a legacy. It was just what I was doing. And subsequent to that, I've become interested in the whole question of legacies. And what is a legacy? and why do we have legacies? And as we sat at the waterhole, I pondered about some of these aspects. And in a nutshell, I'm just going to take you through a little bit of a journey of my mind as we sat there. And the whole question of a legacy is an expression of the future you, of you as you've lived your life and how it is expressed in the future and in many of our eyes. It's expressed when we no longer exist. And we think of, well, that's what people think of us. That's the legacy. Well, the legacy is not that. The legacy is not that. The legacy is actually how you live your life today. How you create your future by being the future you. Now, if we look at how we behave and what we do, it's all driven to quite a large extent by fear. In the wildlife side of things, sitting by the waterhole, it might be a whole situation of a lion coming up against an impala at the waterhole, and it's for the impala, it's flight or fright. It could freeze or run away. Okay, and in many instances in our lives, those situations that confront us, sometimes we run away from them, or sometimes we freeze, or sometimes we just try and avoid them. But it is this goal that we have, this purpose in our lives, that drives a lot of our thoughts and our energy and our action. And as humans, we all act based upon the future that we see for ourselves. Now, come on, all of you, you've at some point in time thought of, well, I'd love to have more money to go on traveling, or I'd love to have a nice house, or I'd like to have a nice car sometime in the future. And in 10 years' time, I'd like to see myself in that position, or I'd like to see that I've moved down to the coast. We all have a goal in our lives. And the goal that we set ourselves is often something that we need to understand is pulled forward by the future that we're committed to. It's not that we're driven by our past. It's not that we are pushed into what we're doing by our past. It's largely that future that we see, that thing we want, that goal. And it's that pulls us forward to the future that we're most committed to. And we as human beings have this unique ability of prospection, of thinking into the future and rationalizing and imagining something that could be there, something that we would like to be there. Almost like the ideation that we've just heard about in that whole innovative, creative process. And it's that prospection, that ability that we have to think of that preferred future that is unique. And it is that preferred future that we then, because we think about it and we would like to be there, whatever that there is the process that drives us and pulls us to be moving forward in life. Now, every person has a purpose, a goal. The person in the image there, his goal at that moment in time is to get to the end of that 100 meters first. That is his purpose at that moment in time. The what is the getting to the finishing line in front of everybody else. The how is by having trained hugely and hard. Look at the guy's muscles and tension in those legs and arms, the drive. That's what's going to propel him there. And the why? Well, the why is the most critical part of many of these processes, because the why is what actually gets us out of bed in the morning. It's what gets this runner out of his bed to train in the freezing cold of winter, in the heat of summer, to train in his sprints hour after hour after hour, to make him a master at what he does. And then if we have a very conscious, clear purpose and a goal, then the behavior follows that purpose and goal. The clearer that we can make our understanding and vision of our purpose and our goal, the behavior follows naturally behind that. The more we can imagine what needs to be in us and what we have to do to be able to be that person running through the tape there and winning, is if we can imagine that very clearly and have that motivation, then the behavior we need to get there will follow. Now, if we look at this here, it's how our mind works. So our life has meaning in some way. We all have our different meaning in life. Mine is to work in conservation and with wild animals and to make the world a better place and to look after our environment. And the purpose I have is to work with influential people and get them to use their influence to be models and to have the ability to get others to follow suit. And that means we have to have foresight and intent. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit now. But that takes some motivation then to get us into action, like that sprinter getting out the blocks. He had to have that motivation, that will to win, that competitive spirit, to take him from being just lying in the bed in the cold morning and saying, I'm not going to get out now this morning out of my bed, it's too cold. Saying, well, despite that, I have to, if I'm going to win the race on Saturday, so I just must get out of bed and go and practice. And so the action comes, and that's the change that needs to take place in a lot of us, because we rather just lie in our beds and take our comfy way through life. And once we're in action and we've done something, it's the reflection on how well we exceeded or succeeded or failed, and how that then changes our meaning in some way. If we fail very often, does it change our meaning? If we win very often, does that change our meaning? And so it's a cycle of that whole set of quadrants or sextants that are there that take us to be leading with growth and purpose. Now, being a future you, or getting to become the future you, means that you have to have a vision into the future of what you want to be. And many of us have very short-term goals that are maybe months, maybe a year, maybe 2 years. But research has showed us that the more we stretch ourselves into the future, the further we stretch ourselves and the wider we just stretch ourselves from a very narrow tunnel vision into a deep future, maybe 10 or even 20 years' time. The more clarity you get about the further out you get, the better chance you have of succeeding. Now, these things here in front of you are called the cone of uncertainty. And logic says that the further out into the future you go, the less certain it is. Yes, true, it is. The fuzzier it gets. But the more research that you do about that 20-year future, and the more that you understand what the constraints are or what the pull is, okay, that is the ability of taking us into different realms. For example, if our perspective, our vision in life, our degree of future insight is 3 years, And then we're quite happy with that. Every year we renew another year into the future, and we bumble on like that. Okay. But let's say we just take 5 years rather than the 1 or 2 years. If we set it at 5 years and we only are able to do half of it, well, then we've achieved 2.5 years towards success. But if we push ourselves to the 10 years and we only reach half, then we've got 5 years worth of success. And same for pushing it to 20. The likelihood that the further out you push it and the more you know about it and the clearer you become, the greater that you're going to achieve. Okay. And so I'm going to stop sharing right now. In us moving into this deeper form of knowledge about the future, the why really comes into play. And the why tells us, if we know more about the stock markets, let's take an example. If we know more about the stock markets and why they go up and down, we're able to predict and maybe make profit out of the whole process. And so that is how our behavior is also. The more we are able to gain insight into and mastery over a situation and have our behavior follow on from that, it allows us to be more successful into the future. Now, the law of power says that depth that you have of the insight into the future, it gives us the power to shape our desires and our destinies. And that is where the people who do in the stock markets and in just general financial analysis, and nowadays in technology and innovation, if you're able to get a deeper insight and a clearer insight of where you want to go and where you want to be, and we can follow on with the behavior, the greater success that we have in life. Now, where does that take us? Sitting under the tree at the waterhole in that wonderful Chobe National Park as the lions and the animals come down to drink. It means that we have to take charge of our lives. We have to be today the future you. We have to know the person we want to be in 5 or 10 years' time, and understand that, let's take, for example, if we bring that person, the future you, back to today and have them examine what we are doing, right or wrong, and then try and see and imagine into their mind, would they be happy with what you're doing? Are they happy with the way you behave? Would that person, that future you with 20, 30 years of experience that comes back to today, would they be able to say, I approve of what you're doing? Or would they just say, wow, you're messing up your life? And so being the future you and understanding the future person you need to be and want to be, and having an insight into that person and applying it into today's world is a critical element of success, because we can learn from that person's perspectives. If we can imagine that they don't approve of what we're doing, we can correct our behavior today. And by doing that, we are crafting our own legacy today. And so you see, sitting under the tree at the waterhole, it came to my mind that a legacy is not the thing that I want people to think about when I'm gone. It's what I want them to think about that I am doing today that resonates with them, that makes them feel happy, and that I make a change or an impact in somebody's life today, not when I'm gone. So go out and be your future you and craft your legacy today. Thank you very much.